Fireball Island. In this vlog, we're going to explore some tactica regarding Fireball Island. I'm about 54 or 55 plays in with the group, and I've been noticing certain patterns in the game. And as strange as it may seem to take essentially a not very serious, fun, kind of quirky type game, a kinetic type game, rolling around marbles and moving your figure, and applying some serious board game tactica to it, or perhaps some serious war game tactica to it. And in playing the game and looking at various strategies, there is something going on based on the physical layout of the board and how the marbles deploy and as you explore the island. So that's where we're going to jump in. But first, with regard to the framework, there are a lot of variables about this game, just in how the board kind of lines up, in how people pour the marbles, and how they flick the marbles if you're playing with the various expansions, how they operate, your figure falls over, are they at one space or the other? It's not, and it's far from an exact science. So I say that because comparing Tactica with other board games where things are well-defined, the rules are well-defined, it's a more serious game, there is a lot of leeway with Fireball Island. And you kind of have to go into this game from that perspective of there's a lot of random going on. There's a lot of random stuff going on in the game. You can't control that. You can only possibly influence it at best. So let's kind of talk about the primary ways to score. Gathering treasure. Of course, you have the treasure slabs, these kind of treasure tokens spread out throughout the island. You've got the Heart of Volcar, this giant gemstone at the top. And then you have snapshots. These are places on the board where if your figure passes by, you're sightseeing, you're going on a holiday, you're touring the island, you take a picture. These are all worth different points. Now, from that perspective, the island can be broken down into three tiers. The lower tier, the mid-tier, and the highest tier where Volcar is and the Heart of Volcar itself. In terms of Tactica, there is a timer going on with the game. That is the first thing we want to keep in mind. At the start of the game, and this timer kind of plays out differently depending on how many players. Again, we're trying to control this random. How many players, how many Cataclysm cards have deployed. As more deploy, more marbles are added, or fireballs, I should say, to the island. And eventually it reaches so much that you have to escape the island. And if you don't, I don't know, it blows up, it sinks. The rules don't really say. But essentially, if you're still on the island at that point, you lose. And then, of course, with the players, where are they grabbing treasures? What are they going for? So at the beginning of the game, you have the most options. And then as the game progresses, your options become less. And certain areas of the island become more risky. So opening game, what I want to focus on, at the beginning of the game, you have to worry about these ember marbles. There are certain marbles placed across the board, and if someone plays a card activating the ember marble, they get to line up and give it a push off and try to knock your figure down. You do your best to stay out of the direct path of these ember marbles, but it's not always so easy. But the main thing that gets you knocked down is Volcar itself, this idol in the middle of the island. You turn it, you drop in a fireball, and it rolls down. These tend to do the most damage. I guess it's kinetically because they're starting at the top of the island, and like a pinball machine, they're making their way down to the bottom. At the beginning of the game, there's only one marble in play. So what this means, the lower level of the island, at the edges of the island, there are numerous treasure slabs. If you can deploy and play a couple of fast movement cards, you can pick up 2, 3, or 4 of these slabs very, very quickly. You're at the bottom of the island, though. What this means is any ember that is shot at you, either deliberately or not deliberately, or if one of the fireballs is deployed, they're going to make their way down to the bottom and potentially smash you. You have the most chance of getting knocked over the lowest point on the island. So at the beginning of the game, tactically, this is kind of where I want to go. This is where I want to head. Pick up all those treasures as fast as I can, as quickly as I can, because as this timer continues and more marbles, more fireballs are added, now it's not just one coming at me. It's two, it's three. Other cards will let you push over the marbles. Things become more intense. So I'm looking to grab the base treasures as fast as I can. And again, depending on the other players. The mid-tier of the board, it's kind of somewhat safe. Now, no place is really safe, but it's kind of somewhat safe because when you deploy a card to move, at the bottom of the card is an action that you might take, that you can take. You don't have to take. When you drop fireballs through Volcar, you get to rotate this kind of idol. You get to move it. You get to line it up. And how many rotations depends on the card. Sometimes it's one, sometimes it's two. Sometimes you might have a special ability card that will let you rotate it a third time. But essentially, you can control trying to keep it on one side of the island versus the other. At that point, the mid-tier is safe. Likewise, as the marbles drop out, the fireballs they deploy, while they are going to be moving down, there is less chance of them hitting you. But nothing is a guarantee. Now let's talk about the top tier level, because this is kind of a decision. These tokens, these treasure tokens, are worth variable amounts depending on how many you have that get revealed at the end of the game. So you get an idea, but there's a lot of swing. The snapshots, of course, are worth equally 5 points each, so you know what to score there. Volcar is worth 7. It's the most powerful treasure in the game. Two things are happening. First, you got to get up there and grab it. It's the hardest treasure to get, and based on having to stop at hazards, either make your way up this ladder on one side of the island or eventually cross the two bridges. But likewise, as soon as you grab it, now you're kind of target number one, because everyone else is, let Fritz do the heavy lifting, grab the heart of Volcar, and then I'm going to play those move 12 cards or those steal treasure cards and just steal it from them. So in terms of grabbing it, you have to kind of decide, worth 7 points, right? A lot of points, a lot of treasure points. But is it worth the danger? Is it worth the possibility? Now, if you're going to go for the heart of Volcar, I want to do that at the beginning of the game. Because at the beginning of the game, there is only one fireball in play. You're going to take one fireball from the scar, drop it down. How to grab the heart means you have to make your way up the side of the island, cross the first bridge. When you cross that first bridge, because it's hazardous in the rules, you stop. What that means is if I play a card that can move, say, 8 spaces, and I go move space 1, 2, 3, 4, cross the bridge 5, you stop. You're vulnerable there because the bridge is actually a channel, I guess it's a river, that the fireballs from Volcar, Fireball Island, they tend to travel down that channel. So at that point, when you're on that bridge, you're very, very vulnerable. If someone plays a Cataclysm card and drops one of those marbles, you're going to get hit. You're going to get knocked off, possibly before you grab the treasure. And then likewise, as you escape, you're going to get hit after grabbing the treasure. So I want to do that at the beginning of the game to go for it when there's only one in play versus mid or end where there's 2 or 3 fireballs in play. Getting off the island. So you've got your snapshots, you've grabbed your treasures, things are getting ready to explode. The first person off the island, as you lose treasures, other players can steal them, but you can also possibly lose treasures, and then you get to put them in kind of this token holder that's got this idol of Volcar. And when you exit the island off the helicopter jump pad into the helicopter itself, you get to pick a treasure from there. The first treasure in there is the Lucky Penny. It's worth 6 points. So there's this tactica of, do I jump off the island right before it explodes, or maybe a little bit before it explodes, and I'm the first to draw those guaranteed points? Or as the island's getting ready to explode, I have maybe 3 or 4 more turns. And then once you play the final card, 2 turns, maybe you want to hang out on the island some more. Tactically, I like to jump off ahead of time because the progression of the game as you deploy these Cataclysm cards After it makes it through the first cycle, you add in another fireball. Makes it through the second cycle, add in another one. By the time you get to the third, when that third cycle ends, you have 2 turns to get off the island. Well, at that point, all the treasure's kind of taken. Most of the treasure is taken. And if someone has the heart, it's been stolen back a couple of times. You should, utilizing the cave system, be able to get at least 2 or 3 snapshots. I won't say complete your whole collection. There's really no need to. But you kind of have everything that you have. And to get the guaranteed points of the lucky penny, I'd rather bank on that than a couple of 3 or 4 more random treasures. Plus, once I hop off the island, you can't steal any of my stuff. So tactically, of course, if I can get some treasure slabs, then grab the heart, or more than likely steal the heart of Volkar, then make it off the island with the lucky penny. That's going to put me in a really, really good place to play. So tactically speaking, there are safer places of the island depending on how the game progresses, where you are at the beginning, middle, or end. How many marbles are in play? How many treasure slabs have been taken? How many players are happening? If you can kind of follow this framework, and in the next couple of vlogs, we're going to look at some of the expansions that are in play and some of the options to utilize those, because being a completionist with poor impulse control and a board gaming enthusiast, we're going to pile on the expansions. And I have to say, Fireball Island, it's done the expansions right. It's done them correct. You add them into the game, and there's some slight rule adjustments and some slight fun things, but nothing that radically alters the game. Nothing that now makes it where I'm adding stuff and now there's bookkeeping and figuring things out. No, it's a game of playing cards, moving your character, grabbing some treasure, and trying to hit each other with a bunch of marbles, right? And make it off the island. The expansions add to that value, as opposed to just adding so much more bloat, where if you add in all the expansions, you feel like, well, I'm not even playing the same game. But the expansions open up some interesting tactica. So that's the core. That is the core framework. Now we're going to build out some of the different treasure types, some of the different expansions, and other things to think about, doing our best to control that random, but also as an exercise to say, something as crazy as Fireball Island, literally kind of a push and play game, we can take that wargaming tactica. We can take that tactica. We can build that checklist and apply that to any game, but especially a game like this, to increase our chances, to increase our odds.